right, for those of you who were not around when we were doing the other parts of this, just so you know, if you do go out to the P drive for the class, the last thing that was saved on here, right here, was last Tuesday, thank you, last Tuesday, a week ago, right there. So there's a folder out there, 11/25/2014. All right, and if you go out to that folder, that's probably too big. You'll find all the stuff that we've been working on for the last couple weeks in here. Mainly, this is the most up-to-date version, as far as I know, of the tip calculator that we've been working on in Android. This is the actual code file that we're going to end up putting in, hopefully by Thursday. Next week, what I plan on doing is I'm literally going to go into the book that we're using next semester, and I'm going to go through the first 3 chapters. You might say, first 3 chapters? The first chapter is you ought to buy Android and use Android because of this. All right, so it's a sell job. The third chapter is what we're doing now. The second chapter, in hindsight, is probably what I should have had us do first, because it's a real simple app that has a couple text views on it. So you bring it in, actually it's got one text view on it. It comes up and it says, welcome to the world of Android programming, or something like that. So you've got that, instead of putting in, hello world, you've got that. Then they put in a couple image views. In the first image view, they put the Android logo in there, the little green robot thing. Then underneath that, ITEL uses one of his own bug images. It's a bug kind of going like this, so welcome, and he's telling you how cool that is. And we'll look at that. All right, that's chapter 2. And then chapter 3, like I said, is this, the one that we've been working on. All right, the reason I use this one is we'd already done this, and most of you were in both classes, and we'd already done this app in the other class. That's why I thought it would make the most sense. All right. Also, what's in here, just so you're aware of it, I've got both a PDF that I've been alluding to occasionally here. It's got pictures of the program as we're going along. All right. And also, I've got all the steps in here. And the steps are a work in progress. In other words, I've got the steps there, but if I discover anything where I made, any place where I made a mistake, I know that never happens, but if I discover any place where I made a mistake, I'll try to update this as soon as I can. So where we had left off last time, basically what we have is the app looking like this, which doesn't look like much, granted, but now we've got our leftmost headings, and they're all lined up with the amount, the custom percent, etc. And I believe, somebody will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that where we left off last time in here was someplace around here, around step 26. I think that's about where we were. So again, we've gone through basically the first 25 or 26 steps out of 33 that are in here. All right. And this is tough, and I'm not saying it's not. I do want you to know that if you look, and I don't know what I've thrown out on Blackboard yet. I honest to goodness don't remember. But as far as the P drive goes, I just want to show you this. I'm not going to duplicate stuff that's out here, but the class after this one for spring is 152, 156. And if you go out there, you'll notice I've already got the PowerPoints that he's got from his book. All right, so next week what I'm going to go do is go through the PowerPoints for Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3. All right, and probably the way we're going to do it is a little bit off kilter, or off whatever you'd want to call it, which is the way I usually do things anyway. We'll probably on Tuesday, go through Chapter 1 and Chapter 3, and then on Thursday we'll go through Chapter 2, and we'll build that simple app as a class. All right, and somebody asked me, I don't remember who it was. All right, I'm not going to say, it might have been Mike. I don't remember who it was. Because how are you going to even grade us for this? Well, this class it's easier because the majority of your grade will be on the Java stuff. All right, so if you're behind, please get the stuff in as soon as you possibly can. I mean, that goes for any class that you might be behind in. All right, I mean, I was getting a little bit frustrated this morning because in the class with the first year people, and I can mention it with Micah here because he's already finished most of his stuff. All right, but I know in the JavaScript class that I said they could have until the end of the semester to turn in their last assignment, which is good because looking in here, there's like 5 people who've turned in nothing all semester. They've only had 3 assignments. All right, and they've had 3 assignments in the other class too, the website development class, and there's probably 4 or 5 people in there who haven't turned in anything. What I hate is I hate it when I start getting stuff on Friday, when I have to have grades in on Monday. The way it sounds right now, I'm crossing my fingers they're not going to give us one of their happy little in-services on that Monday the 15th. So I believe I'll be able to do my stuff from home. So the only reason I come in here is if for some reason the virtual desktop doesn't work, which means I hope and pray that the virtual desktop does work so I don't have to come in here. But grades are due that Monday, to my knowledge. They're due by like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What that means is we're supposed to have them in by noon, all right? Because they usually run our division first because we've got some of the highest numbers. And if there's any problems, then they want to be able to get to us early in the afternoon so we can make upgrades, updates, etc. And my boss is becoming such a stickler, too, for incompletes. It used to be you had to have 50% of the work done. Her mentality, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but her idea is, no, it's 75%. She said that's her rule, and she wants us to abide by it. Okay. All right. So, again, next week, like I said, we'll go over these 3 chapters. And, again, as you notice, and I'm not going to sit and read PowerPoints to you. I just want to hit some of the highlights. All right. And I'm not going to do that next semester. The PowerPoints will be out there, but I'm not going to go through them next semester. So that's chapter 3. Again, tip calculator. All right. It might have made more sense to be going through these as opposed to the way that I did it. All right. And then chapter 2, like I said, just wanted to show that to you. Bless you. That's what you build. Whoop. So that's just, you basically replace the hello world with welcome to Android app development. You add a text view, or I'm sorry, an image view in here where you put the Android image and another one where you put in one of their images. That's it. There's no code. So again, literally it'll give you a chance. And with that one, I don't remember how they build that one, but we'll go through it like I said. And then chapter 1, as I mentioned to you, as it's the typical kind of intro to Android type of book, or type of chapter rather. And what they talk about in there is, again, why you should use it, the history of Android, etc. I don't want to go through history. You want to go through that, there's a lot better resources you can go to than this book and me. But we'll talk a little bit about it. Probably spend 10 or 15 minutes on that. Then we'll spend some time going over, like I said, the chapter 3 stuff also. All right, and that'll be it. But I'd like to set it up, if possible, next week so that both those lectures are no more than an hour. So if you still are working on the house applet or anything else, you'll have some time to work on those. All right? Yeah, and I hope you didn't spend your Thanksgiving working on any Java. All right? Or anything else, for that matter. Or if you did, yeah, lie to me. Tell me you didn't. Okay. So that stuff is in there. And there's also, just so you see it, I've got some articles that I've thrown out there on Android. There's no homework yet, of course. No in-class yet. Learn Android. Oh, this was a thing from Toots Plus. This was about 21 long. And it's a few years old, but it's on Android fundamentals. And it's really well done. All right, so I've got that out there. There's a guy named Marty. All right, no, not Marty McFly or anything else, but there's a guy, he's done some stuff where he's got some stuff that he's put out there on both Java, and it starts to get into Android, so I put that out there. This is all the source code. That's the source code for every chapter in the book for next semester. All right, so the tip calculator, the one we're doing now, that's there. That welcome, which is what you do the first day, that's there. Notice that there's 3 copies of it. All right. What he does is he's trying to sell you on the fact that you should use that strings.xml file. And what he does for the internationalized versions, he goes and he writes the welcome to Android app, he writes it in Spanish. All right, so you can see that, okay? And with the accessibility, I haven't looked at that one yet, but supposedly, and I didn't even know this existed, but there's some kind of a feature there that's called Talkback that I believe when you run the app, it'll speak that to you, the stuff that's on the screen. So we'll look at that next week also. All right, how much, I don't know, just depends on how much time we have, how much we can get through. All right, so like I said, again, I believe we're somewhere around right here. All right, so I'm not going to go through any of the stuff anymore in steps 1 through 25 because we already have. We talked about this also last time, that as it says, each edit text has a descriptive text view. Now remember, this is Java and Android ease here. In other words, when they say typically each edit text has a descriptive text view, we would say something like typically each text box has a label. So it's the same thing, but it's just that's the jargon or the nomenclature or whatever. That's what they use here. All right? Okay. He also talks a little bit about the plus sign, etc., and why you have to set it up like this. And the bottom line is, be this right, wrong, good, bad, indifferent, or whatever, the reason that we have to do it like this is that's the syntax for the language. All right? And I don't like having to do it like this. I wish that every language was set up the same way. I wish every IDE was set up the same way. All right, then it would be much easier to teach you one of these. All right, but they're not, so I don't. All right, so what they wanted you to do was basically come in and set that up. And whether you do that or don't do that, it's really not going to have any bearing on the program. The program will work just fine if you don't do it. All right. So, I think we were on step 27, but I don't think we finished it because it was real close to the end of the class. So it says here on step 27, in the final app, the amount edit text is hidden behind the amount display text view and is configured to only allow digits to be input by the user. So we're going to have a numeric keypad. But with that numeric keypad, not only do you get digits, you get a plus sign, you get a minus sign, you get the space bar, etc. So what we're doing in here is we're saying that's all we're allowing. And you don't have to worry again about the dollars and cents because they'll be put in there for you automatically, because as you put values in, they're immediately going to be divided by 100. And that's got the decimal place in there for you already in what we're working on. So you don't have to worry about that. All right. Now, when we look at this, and again, we talked about this last time, it says in the property windows layout parameters section, set width and height to wrap contents. Remember, there's a difference between wrap content and match parent. All right? With wrap content, basically it's going to take up just the room that it needs, right? Okay? And no more. So again, the idea, and some of you saw this maybe the hard way, I don't know, but I'm going to draw a picture on the board where you were creating something, and let's say that you have a button here. So let's make it simple. So let's say you've got some kind of a text view there, some kind of an edit text here, so something like name, and then you've got this, and then you've got a button here. All right? Put that button, make it about the size of the other one. All right? These two, you typically are going to end up making them wrap content. If you made this one match parent, a lot of times what's going to happen is that's going to be a humongous button. It's going to take up all the room it possibly can take up. All right. So do you use match parent? About the only time you'll end up using match parent is if you're embedding a layout inside of a layout. All right. More often than not, that's when you're going to use it. We're not really doing much of that in here. So I don't believe there's anything in here where we're using match parent in this particular example. All right. When they talk about gravity, as it says there, it says remove the layout gravity value. Usually what they're talking about is some kind of alignment on the screen. And remember, when you're aligning, you can align both, horizontally and vertically on the screen. All right. So a lot of times when they talk about that stuff in here, it says remove the layout gravity, fill horizontal, leaving it blank. What that means is either you're going to reset it in code or you're going to set it someplace later on in the program. All right. We talked last time about this ems property. That literally is the width of an uppercase M. And the reason that I want to mention that, I want to say it again, is especially when you're working with mobile devices, it's really important to be working in things like M's. You don't want to use pixels. All right, because if you use pixels, well, I'm just going to make it 20 pixels. That's not going to look real nice on a phone. All right, not if you can have 2 digits on your phone and it's taking up almost your whole viewing area. All right, just in the same way when you start to build stuff mobile, you're using percentages. Now we're talking about using M's, etc. All right, because those values scale based on the type of media that you're using. All right. All right. And also in here, as it says, in the app, the maximum bill amount is going to be 6 digits. So in other words, the biggest bill you can have is what's shown up there. All right. I mean, let's face it. If you got a bill that's greater than $9,999, you probably wouldn't use something like this for it anyway. All right. So when you look at what's in here, they say to complete the following. All right. The formatting of the amount display text view, select it, and do all this stuff. All right. And then they say go to the custom percent text view and do all this stuff. All they're doing in here is they're setting properties. They're trying to now make it so that, again, we already talked about it, that when you look at it, the only thing that really is done, so to speak, on here are these 4 headings. All right. The stuff that's in here, this, and these, none of those are done yet. So that's what they're having you do aesthetically, because you want to make sure when you run the program, it looks halfway decent. If we ran it right now, all right, if we did run it right now, it's going to look a lot like it does on the screen. You know, the word medium text will still be in there, and all those numbers are going to be flushed together. So what we're doing in here is we're making it a little easier to work with. All right, we're making it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Then in step 31, we come through here, and it says by default the seek bar has a range of 0 to 100. We want to change that because our tip calculator only allows 0 through 30. And we want the default to be at 18%. So as it says, we want the max to be 30, and we want the progress property to be set to 18. Right? And then finally, we come in here on step 31 and 32. It says here we want the 15% text view. It says here a grid layout does not let the user specify how a view should be sized relative to other views. So in other words, if you've got a view within a view, it's usually the outside view, the outer one, that's going to basically have the control over what the inner one can and cannot do, not vice versa. And that's what they're talking about right there. And again, when I could have in here, when I found something I thought was something that could help you, if you were looking at this and it didn't make sense, I tried to note it in there, which is by giving you a URL. Okay, a couple more things. First of all, notice that by default here, as it says, this is really an important concept, and I want you to understand it. It says, by default, all views have a weight of 0, equal importance. In English, what that means is that if I take this and I tip it, for example, and I make it landscape, okay, that every single thing that we have in there, right now, everything has a weight of 0, so all of them will stretch or shrink together collectively. Does that make sense? All right, they all have the same thing. But what we do in here is we take 1 or 2 of these fields, and instead of giving them a weight of 0, we give them a weight of 1, which means that the other stuff we don't want to shrink and grow, but we want that to shrink and grow. So basically, I should even use grow. If you give something a weight of 1, what you're saying is you want it to use as much of the area as you possibly can use. All right? So that's when we come in here, we set the layout weight for the 15% text view, the custom, and the totals. We want those to stand out. We want those to take as much of the area that we're putting them in as they possibly can take up. We don't care that much about making the headings scale as we do making those values scale. And that's what they're talking about in here. All right. And then the last step, what's that? I believe you can, yes. All right. You may be able to put fractions in. I've never tried doing that, so I can't tell you that for sure. And then finally, as it says, to vertically center the tip text view and the total text view. So when you get all done, it says the GUI should now look like the following screenshot. When you're all finished, it should now look like this. All right. The only way that yours would look different from what you see right here is if you follow Dytel's instructions to the letter, the ones that I gave you and the ones that I've been going through right now. He doesn't have you manually put in those zeros. I think it's a good idea to do that. You can do it, you can leave them off. But the nice thing about doing it that way is when you run it then, all right, if you don't put them in when you run it, it's going to look like this, which is okay. There's not a problem doing that. All right, so it's going to look like what you see down here in the bottom right-hand corner. If you do put in the zeros, then instead it's going to look like this when you run it. All right, you might have your own feelings as to which one looks better. And it really and truly, in the end, it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't matter for you, it doesn't matter for me. However, if you are actually creating a tip calculator, and the idea is, let's just pretend for a second what you actually wanted to do was to sell it on the App Store, then it might make a big difference. All right, the coloring that he uses in here, I mean, some of the stuff is blue and some of it's orange. You might not want to use that. You might want to have a welcome screen, you know, some kind of an opening splash screen. We're going to get into all that stuff next semester. All right. In fact, my guess is if you went out to the App Store on Apple or you went out to Google Play and you looked up tip calculator, there probably are scores of them. All right. How can I say that? When I took a class in Android, now it's 2.5 summers ago, or two summers plus ago, the guy, he had us work on a thing that he had created for his first app. And he put it out there for free just to see how many people would download it. And literally, it was a grocery store app where you could sit there and put stuff in, etc., and then, you know, add stuff and then remove stuff as you bought it, etc. And he had maybe a few hundred people who had downloaded it. He said at first he felt kind of bad, but then when he went in and looked and there were over 1,000 grocery store apps, he didn't feel that bad. All right, because, you know, sometimes, you know, people will just download free stuff to see what it's like, etc., if they're going to build stuff or whatever. All right. So what I'm going to do is, you know, be this good or bad, I'm going to keep going through the steps. And you can watch me, but I think we've gotten to the point where this is all aesthetic stuff, that it might make more sense for you to do it yourselves. Because what I hate to do is to tell you to do something and then realize I've been on the wrong control, or I put the wrong amount in, or whatever. So I'll do it. You can watch, and I'm going to tape it step by step. But I think that you can probably just work on what's left on your own. And then once you get to that point, all right, then what's left to do is, again, thought I can't, there it is. Whoops. This file that's right here, this main activity.java, this is the actual file that's got all the code in it. All right. The only, again, you could literally go into your main activity.java file and you could go and put this one in instead of the one that's in there, except what you want to do is, of course, make sure that this line right here has got your package in it. So what I'd recommend is not removing your package statement. So in other words, I can do this right now just to show you what I mean. All right, so I can go over here to mainActivity.java. And there's all my code. All right, so I can now go and highlight all of this. And I'm not going to remove it yet, but I will in just a minute. So I've highlighted all of it. Now I want to go back to here. Oops, which is here. And now I can highlight all of this. Copy it to the clipboard. Okay. Come back into here. Now I've got all that highlighted. Again, it's right underneath my actual statement here. And do a Control-V and paste in the new stuff. So now it's in there. Now, is it possible there are mistakes in there? Yes. There shouldn't be. Literally, I took his code and added even more comments than he put in there. I tried to comment everything virtually that was happening in here. Like I said, you can see it's close to 300 lines with all the comments. His was about 120 or 130, something like that. So I got a lot of comments in there. I used some of his comments. I didn't like some of his comments, so I put my own in there. After you do that, of course, that would always be a good time to save. So ideally, what I'm going to be able to do then by the end of the period, by putting in the rest of the stuff in steps 25 to 33 or 26, whatever it is, I might even go back and look at the first 25 steps and make sure I didn't forget anything. But now with that code in there, what I should be able to do when I get all done is to bring this thing up then in the emulator, and ideally it's going to work. All right. And so again, what that means is when we actually run it then, we'll be able to put in something. I guess we didn't even have one where it's actually got a value in it. But for instance, in here, if I put $50, all right, then right there, all right, for 15%, what, $7.50 for 18%, it's going to be what, $9. So that'll say 57 and 59. That should make sense to everybody. All right, that was the idea, to get everybody to build this. All right, and if it turns out that a week from Thursday, the last day, we build the other one and you go, man, that one's a hell of a lot simpler, I wish we'd have done that first. Well, that's good for me to know. All right, and it should be a lot easier because this one's harder. All right, you're all sophisticated enough users, whether you think you are or not, that there really wasn't anything in this app that probably is over any of your heads. The Java in here is simpler than the Java that we've worked on for the last few programs. All right, it's just what's different is the fact that we're putting the stuff into different routines because we haven't worked with those routines before. And as you know, if I go back up here, well, if you notice here, there's a bunch of, not there, you're used to something like this, import java.text number format. You're not used to these. Well, you're all smart enough that you all realize, since they start with Android, those are Android specific things. All right? And what I tried to do here was, again, put comments in there so you know what the heck those are involved with. So like I said, my hope is between now and the end of the period, everybody can make the rest of those changes. And then by the time we start class on Thursday, you've got the code in there. Even if it doesn't work, you've at least got that done. And if mine doesn't work, I see there's an X in it now, and that's okay. But if mine doesn't work, I'm going to try to make sure mine works with the code in it by next class. And I will make sure that there will be a 12-04-2013 folder out there that'll have the completed project in it. All right, the one that we've been doing in class. All right, but it'll give me a chance to go over the code and go over the comments that go along with the code. There are many more comments than I would ever expect you to put in, all right, in a program. That said, if you decide for if you're in the 152-164 class next semester, the Design and Implementation Projects class, and you say, again, I'm going to lecture in there for 9 weeks, then you're going to have 9 weeks basically of lab. All right, I hope we have better attendance. I appreciate all the people who do come. But, you know, this morning we had 2 people. 2 out of what, 9 or so that are in the class. Now, there's, you know, some people are more comfortable working at home. Like I said, Kelly had a problem with his vehicle, and sometimes stuff just happens. All right? But I worry about my own well-being because my boss has walked by here a few times. And if she ever walks by and sticks her head in here and then goes upstairs and says, well, there's 10 people in that class, and why are there only 2 in there? What that's going to mean, I can tell you that the next time we have class, she's going to walk by again because she wants to see if this is a pattern or if it's an anomaly. All right, and I like to think that it's an anomaly. All right, I also am pretty confident in the fact that most people seem to like the app stuff with iPhone and with Android, so hopefully the attendance will be real good. All right, and if you haven't signed up, because I'm supposed to keep pushing this on people, that, for instance, like if you didn't take the C class, but you want to take the iOS class, the iPhone class, you can. All right. If Banner doesn't let you do it, just get an add drop form and have me bring it to me, and I'll sign it. The schedule next semester, if you're in the 2nd semester of classes, the morning is got from 10 to 12 on Tuesdays and Thursdays is the Design and Implementation Projects class. That's the first class you have. There is no 8 o'clock class. The internship class, which is called Field Study, that's online. From 1 to 3, same time we have this class, on Tuesday and Thursday, that's the Android class, and from 3 to 5 is the iOS class. As always, lectures will be taped. That's at least the plan. I'm also trying to get IT. I have a meeting with them next week. I'm going to try to get them to provision these machines here. So what I want them to do is something that technically isn't legal, but people do it anyway. And that is to put OS X Yosemite on a virtual desktop here and Xcode. So you'll be able to do your work for your iOS stuff from home. If they say they won't do it, they can't do it, whatever, then we're stuck with the 6 machines that we've got back there right now. And John, just so you know it, I've never seen anything like this with Mike in class yesterday, last Tuesday. His wasn't upgraded, his Xcode wasn't upgraded. It still said 5.1. And I said, well, I know they did all of them, so I don't know what happened. We upgraded it. Boom, it worked right away. Came in yesterday, it was back at 5.0 again. As soon as we hit update, it updated it. All right? So, I mean, I'm not even sure what the heck is happening. But, and Zach was working yesterday. It wasn't on the machine that he and Laura have. That wasn't upgraded either. So, and we couldn't get it out of the mode where it had the Tony tones, you know, for Tony Reynolds thing. And Zach finally got it off, and I went in to go and try to change. It still wouldn't take it. So they ended up using the machine that you've been using. All right. So I mean, I wanted to give them something that they could work with. So I don't want those kind of problems. I wanted, if there's a problem, hopefully IT will help me with it. Not that they say you're on your own. All right. I'm not a hardware guy. I prove that every day. All right. So again, I'm going to walk through the rest of these steps, and I'm going to keep taping. And I'd like you to do it, and I don't care if you watch me do it, you do it along with me, or if you do it on your own. It doesn't matter. All right? And if you say, well, what if I don't want to do it at all? Then don't. Again, like I said, you already have, if you go out to the P drive where I just showed you before, one of those P drive there. If you go out to the P drive for the, not for this class, but for the follow-up class to this one, for what it's called 152, 156 Android, and there's a Spring 2015 folder again. Under there, under source code, excuse me, and under Android 2 examples, and under Eclipse projects, there's the welcome. I'm sorry, there's the tip calculator. There it is. That's the finished project. That's the exact same one that we've been building. So if you say, you know, I've already had enough, then do whatever you're going to do. I still think it makes some sense for you to go through, get used to changing these things. All right. And like I said, I know a couple of you said to me, well, I like it when you do it, we're kind of following along. I appreciate that. But we've had so many little glitches and stuff that have happened that I'll keep doing that. But for some of you, it might be easier for you to branch out and be doing it on your own. If you don't feel that way and you want to watch me and keep along with me, that's fine too. All right. It's 1:41. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop taping right now, and in 10 minutes, I'm going to start going through the steps. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to be going through the steps, and I'm going to do that for the rest of the class. Does that all make sense? All right. And again, like I said, right now, for all the second-year classes, I think there are only 6 people signed up, and I'm not sure who those 6 are. My guess is, if I had to guess, it's probably Mark and Teresa. It might be Zane and Mike, and it might be Kelly and Zach. I don't even know. All right, but for the rest of you, all right. And they're not going to cancel classes, even if there's 6. They're going to run them with 6. I mean, they better run them with 6, because they want all of you to graduate. All right, but especially for you and for Travis, etc. What I said was, if you want to take the iOS class, that's fine. I mean, Teresa, she took the ASP.NET class this semester. She took it off sequence, and she's taken the beginning C# one next semester. All right. So we have people do that kind of stuff all the time. That's not a problem. All right. Registration has always been really good about working with us on that. All right. So take your break, and like I said, I'm going to just continue on when we come back.